Good day and welcome. Welcome to NAC TV's Coffee Chat. My name's Lyle Watson, and we're continuing on in the series whereby we've been discussing with the local service clubs some of their present, their past and their future, and looking at the situations in terms of what they've contributed to our community and also what the future may be for the different clubs within our community. Today we're pleased to have the Kin Club of Neepawa with us. And of course, we also had the previous Neepawa Kinsman Club of Neepawa and the Neepawa Cadets. So we're pleased to have with us today Noreen Hollier, who was the charter member of the Neepawa Cadets back a number of years ago. Thank you for coming, Noreen, and welcome. And we'd like to welcome the charter president, Wayne Hollier. About 45 years ago, started the Kinsman Club here in Neepawa, and thank you for joining us today, Wayne.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we have a longtime Kin member. Of course, it's now the Kin Club, but also proud to say that she is the current national vice president of the Kinsman Club of Canada, and next year she will be our president. Amanda, thank you for being with us today also.
Thanks a lot, Lyle.
In fact, on that note, I think I'm going to start with you, Amanda. Could you give us a bit of the history of how Kinsman got started and who started it and for what reason?
Yeah, for sure. So Kin Canada was started back in 1920. Hal Rogers is the person, our founder, and he served in the First World War. And when he came back from that experience, he really missed that camaraderie that he had with his fellow soldiers, and he was really looking for something to replace that. And so he actually tried to join a Rotary Club, but at that time his father was also a Rotarian, and there was a rule at that time that two members of the same family or two people with the same position or occupation couldn't join the club. And so he decided, well, I'm going to start my own thing. And so he and a group of guys got together, and February 20th, 1920 was the very first meeting of what they called the Kinsman Clubs, and in Hamilton, Ontario, at a Chinese food restaurant. So that's how it all began, just wanting to do some good things in the community, but to also have some membership and fellowship with other people.
And you mentioned the Kin Club of Canada, and the Kinsman Club of Canada. There's only Canada. It's a Canadian club, and that's it. And
yeah. We're actually Canada's only all Canadian service organization. So it's just coast to coast to coast.
Yeah.
So
there's no international or national.
No.
It's all national Kinsman clubs. Well, thank you, Amanda. And Wayne, you were a Kinsman member in Russell. And you moved to Neepawa in what year?
We moved in 75.
And you had an interest or were motivated to look at the possibility and to pursue a possibility of starting a Kinsman Club upon your arrival here in Neepawa.
Yes. No discredit to him, but the individual that introduced me into the Lions Club said that the Lions were almost identical to the Kinsmen in terms of what they believed in, and that was in making the community a better place, etc. But I soon realized that the Lions Club didn't fulfill the needs I had, or that we had as a young family, and I joined and then quit. And fortunately, I did it in the proper way. I sent a notice in telling that I was quitting and so on. And from there, moved on into forming a Kinsman Club. And Kinsman had an age limitation on it. It was 40 at the time, and that age limitation, there were a similar group of people like Don Crabb and Dave Speece and Doug Forsman and so on that were also fit that category, and they all had a common interest, and the common interest again was hockey, and we quickly became involved in hockey against Brandon clubs and against the Grandview Club and other clubs that had similar interests, and but again, we never lost sight of the fact that we were trying to make the community a better place in which to live and raise our families.
And it was a young man's club.
It was a young
Yeah.
man's club.
Yeah.
And there was an age limit of 40, and what happened when you became 40? Well, at the time we didn't know, and we didn't really care. We were having
40 was a long way
too
away.
much fun. Yeah, having too much fun.
Yeah.
And for example, when we started up the Kinsman Court, this was a new thing, and we'd looked at other properties, and everybody, I'm sure not everybody, but there were a lot that thought we were crazy building on a hillside such as we did. And again, it was initially designed for 50 plus a caretaker suite, which was to be under the ramp, and it ended up as a 51. But it was the first of its kind in Neepawa, like a
Affordable housing.
affordable housing and so on. And we ended up receiving 2 grants. One was from the Manitoba
Can I
government.
just go back to you starting the Kinsman Club when? So you were motivated, you attracted a number of young men to a few meetings, and then you organized a charter night. When did that charter take place?
The charter was in November. We started in March or April or one of those
Of
months.
what year?
As a club, we started in March or April, but we became chartered in November, and it was
1977.
Minnedosa Club
Yeah,
chartered.
1977.
Was it 77?
76, I think.
76.
Yeah.
And
76, yes.
the year doesn't matter, but it was in the mid 70s, and we became a charter club, and it was Minnedosa that, quote, was responsible for us. I'm sure that Minnedosa numerous times has wondered why did they deserve it, but because we were far beyond what they had envisaged.
Yeah.
And
So do you remember, Wayne, how many charter members were there?
we had 48 charter members.
Yeah.
But we started the club with 37 members, and by the time we chartered in the fall, it was 48 members that we had as charter.
So after that chartering of the Kinsman Club, eventually the Cadets, shortly after, they chartered a club of which Noreen was the charter president of the Neepawa Cadet Club. Noreen, what year did you start then?
Started in 77, later in 77, but officially charter night was May 5th of 1978 with 33 members. And we looked at the 4 corners of kin work as service, fellowship, friendship, and fun.
Yeah.
And that we did. And right now, I was reading, as I said, there are over 400 clubs in Canada, and typically raise more than 18 million a year. But you said this past year they raised
28 million.
28 million in Canada.
Wow. So at that time, to belong to the Cadet Club, did your spouse or partner have to belong to the Kinsman Club?
Yes, we were.
Okay. So it was a joint effort.
It was a joint
family
effort.
thing.
A family, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I could concentrate on the family thing, our kids still remember the fact that it was mom or dad are going out to Kinsman or Kinnets, and it was a family thing.
Yes.
And we did things as a family, and it was important to them. They grew up thinking that there was no other club
Yeah.
other than a Kinsman club or a Kinnet club.
Yeah.
And
But we had the Halloween parties, the Christmas parties, and included the
Yeah.
children with us. They
Yeah.
dressed in costumes for Halloween, and
Yeah. So the families
so-
were included in many
yes,
of
they
the
were.
events.
Yes.
yeah.
And does that happen today, Amanda, in the club as much? or?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to include our families in as much as we possibly can. Sometimes it's harder nowadays where you've got, parents that are both working or different shifts and things like that. And some of our members don't necessarily have children at home anymore. But I started. I was pregnant actually, and you know,
Yes.
Emma probably came to more meetings than some of our current members. So and very much was, you know, that was, you know, we want to be accessible and be a family oriented kind of organization. Yeah.
The other thing was we want to kind of review today is the legacy that the Kinsman and the Kinnett clubs and now the Kin Club of Neepawa have left in our community up to this point. And Noreen, I think I'm going to refer that question to you first. I know you have some pictures and you've been doing a little bit of reading and back on some of the things we started and did in terms of community efforts. Could you do that for us, please?
Sure. I'll just go back to the forming of the Kinnett Club in Canada. It formed in 1942, World War II, and Britain put out the call for milk for Britain in 1942. So then it started in Ontario too for helping the children.
A major driver in.
And that's a legacy in itself.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a really interesting documentary on Milk for Britain that you can go onto the King Canada website and watch, and it's about 10 minutes, and it really sums up that whole and really is kind of the essence of what Kinsmen and Kinnets and Kin do across the country.
Yeah. And what are some of the other legacies that you may have there?
I guess I will look back to we helped the Kinsmen with a lot of the projects too, financially and that. The fetal heart monitor at the hospital was a joint.
Yep.
And of course it was a lot of money to be able to come up with in those days.
Yeah.
The Kinsmen did give us a couple of their bingos a year, so we would help them with running the bingos. But a lot of the stuff that the Kinnets have done was we started with a bake sale. Had a formation night in May and had a bake sale 2 weeks later. We made $104.40 at it, which was a fair bit of money then. But some of our service projects were the Santa Shop and Children's Shopping Center, which the stores came to. We had the Clarks was in the Vivian Hotel. He managed it. So we often got the basement. And we had a couple of Christmas where the children bought. They had no gifts over $10. And we started a local branch of the Canadian Diabetic Association with guest speakers and a couple of suppers that we sponsored for them. Babysitting course, and we had speakers come to that, and the main theme of them was the safety of children. 1 year too, with our family, we gathered at Riverbend Park and had a fitness walk and then a barbecue afterwards. The first summer too was the RCMP musical ride with the Kinsmen. I never guessed that there'd be 4,000 people. Like, we were just run out of stuff. We run the booth, the Kinnets did. We went to every store in town to get extra drinks and that. It was a hot, windy day. We made a lot of pierogies. We hired Mrs. LeBuc and Mrs. Lazure to help us make pierogies and sold them. And Christmas time too, the Santa Parade, we were floats in that, both Kinsmen and Kinnets. Boxing Day dance, that was at that time. The Kinsman would look after it and we would help. After the Kinsman Court building, we had the annual tea, and with money going to cystic fibrosis, that was a big national project. Yeah. And multiple sclerosis, we helped with that. We sold carnations right at Mother's Day on the street corners in Neepawa. I'm just trying to think of some other projects over the years.
Well, maybe we'll go on to Wayne and some of the legacy of the projects that the Kinsmen done. And I know there's a number of them, and whether we have time to talk about them all or not, I'm not sure. But if you can kind of just give us a bit of background on some of the projects that the Kinsmen
one of the first things, and Noreen has mentioned the fact that in a lot of the Kinsman projects, we had the wives helping us, and then later the Canet Club helping us, and that's how the two became so close, I think. And again, the direction that the Canet Club took to begin with was to assist the husbands, and then they started to do projects on their own.
Yes.
And that was an important aspect, I think, for both. And in an indirect way, it helped the Kinsman clubs in that we knew that we weren't talking just 30 members. We were talking 30 members plus the wives and so on. And we ended up counting on their support for many of the projects that we did. And we knew that we had the support, and I shouldn't say knew, but we assumed that we had the support of the Canet Club, Canets, the wives, and then later Canets, and then the Canet Club. And so a lot of the projects that we did were not necessarily just kin projects, but were Kinsman Canet projects, and that's why it became a family situation. Like I can recall at Russell, we lived across the street from what was the Kinsman Play Park, and they didn't have a washroom, and the young children used to come and knock on Noreen's door and say, Mrs. Canet, can we, or Mrs. Mrs. Kinsman, can we use your washroom? And again, she became known as Mrs. Kinsman long before we moved from Russell to here. And it was rather funny because they had no washroom there, but they knew they could count
They could
on.
come.
And the Kinsman Play Park here at Touchwood.
Yeah.
When they got involved with that, then we did too. We bought dishes for one of the Touchwood residents and water pitchers, water jugs for them. We also put a couple of benches in the Kinsman Park there. The Canets did. So whatever they did, we'd follow behind and fill in.
Fill in. So
And the Kinsman sponsored or installed the initial playground equipment in that Touchwood Park.
And the initial equipment, which was a copy of the actual thing, was done by Dennis Gagnon.
Yes.
Dennis, and also the guy from our Eden. Doesn't matter at the time, but we were putting in equipment that was as good as
up to date.
Up to date.
anyone else could manufacture, and it was manufactured locally. And a lot of the equipment that went in was done by local artists, local people, so on. And
when you helped out at the Yellowhead Center too, and that the Canetson realized there was no water fountain there for the children. So we bought the water fountain and had locally put in.
What about some of the projects? One that comes to mind
well,
is the windfall.
we go to bingo. We started bingo in the basement and so on. And when the club discontinued it, we handed it over to a community organization. But we had done the bingo and the windfall night and the, as you mentioned, the Kinsman Courts was at first.
1983 for the centennial.
Neepawa. It was at first for Neepawa, and later other clubs and other organizations copied what we did, and so
but
on.
The Yellowhead Manor was open just a year or two beforehand, which was a similar.
But it was a government thing.
Now, what about the windfall, for example? There was a designated, the profits from that night were designated to a particular...
It was designated, the funds raised from it were to go to CF. And the very first person we had out was the longest surviving CF individual in Canada. And he was 21 or 22. And it was a disease, cystic fibrosis was a disease of young people. And it was rather appropriate, the fact that Kinsman should take that on as a mission that they had. And one of our first guest speakers was Dr. Ong.
Yes.
I can recall entertaining him in the kitchen while he was waiting to get onto stage and so on, and so
And then Ronald McDonald House was another that
Yeah.
the Kinsman Club
And
here.
that's just when the Ronald McDonald House was starting. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
donation was one of the first to
First.
come in from rural Manitoba.
Yes.
I remember.
Yeah.
and
Wow.
everything, like for example donkey baseball, yeah, ridiculous thing, and it was a ridiculous sport, but we made over $5,000 at it, and we immediately turned that over to the Lions Club, who had made a pledge to the swimming pool, and they were able to complete their pledge
Yeah.
because all the funds that were generated from that evening were turned over to them, and so on. And it's not that we wouldn't have had need for it, but it was another a community organization that was trying to do the same thing that we as young men in the community were trying to do. And I can recall the CK Extras, and we had a CK Extras hockey night, and I can recall Dave Speeson thinking that they had maybe stepped off a cliff, and Dave Speeson and Don Crabb, but it was the first time that standing room only at the Yellowhead, and I had to go down and get changed twice, and I thought to myself, never again will I be critical of a young person's idea, because it was Dave Speece and Don Crabb, and it was their idea, and they carried the night,
Yeah.
and they got the extras, the CK Extras,
Yeah.
and we had the RCMP out for it, and because I remember them handcuffing some of the opposition to the wire cage, and made it easier for us to score.
There was always an element of fun in every.
Oh yeah, and it was fun, and
Yeah.
it turned into fun.
I'm going to just touch briefly on K40, and I'm not going to expand on it because we've got other things we want to talk to about. But in the early 80s, 90s, I guess a lot of the members hit 40, and for a short period of time there was a K40 club, but it never took off. Really, it never got established. And I think I'm going to leave it at that because of time. Down the road, within a couple years, then the Cadet Club had kind of joined the Kinsmen at that time, and that's about the time you come in to the Kin Club, and it was changed.
Yeah. So I joined in about 2004, 2005. We were fairly new to Neepawa. The Kin Club, the Kinsmen and the Canets had amalgamated to join together and to form a Kin Club. So
And that was across the country.
no, well, the Kin Canada is kind of like now any club that is a new club is a Kin Club. So whether or not you want to join men and women, or if you just have men or just have women or whoever, but it is just kind of open to anybody. Kinsmen clubs typically were men only. Cadet clubs were typically women only. Kin clubs kind of open it up, and it didn't matter who you were, you could join. So the idea was that the membership was dwindling in both clubs, and that, you know, if we were just kind of combine our efforts, that was kind of the idea. So for me, when I joined Kin, I didn't know any different about, you know, how clubs function, right? And the difference between a Kinsman club or a Cadet club.
Yes.
Which for myself has been quite a blessing, because I don't have to worry about the politics of whatever. You know, if you are interested in serving your community's greatest need and want to have some fun doing it, and you feel like you want to, you know, join in, you're welcome to join in, right? Whether whatever gender you are.
You just repeated the Kinsman motto.
Yeah, serving the community's greatest needs.
And,
Yeah,
and that was established back when Hal Rogers.
absolutely. Yeah.
And you're still serving the community's greatest needs.
Yeah, and I think that gives us quite the. It gives you a little bit of freedom,
Yes.
because you can really decide on what your community's
That's
greatest need is, whether that's building a senior center, or, you know, helping out with a pool, or joining forces with another organization within your community to make your community better.
Yeah.
And I really feel that really gives us a unique kind of perspective as Kin, because, yeah, you do what you need to do for your community. It's not dictated about you should
Yeah.
do X, Y, and Z. You know how
Yeah.
some international clubs, you know,
Yeah.
you've got kind of expectations of what
Yes.
you need to.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
when you look at kin, it really is about your community and what you're doing for your community, and in effect in your country. There are some national projects, like cystic fibrosis is still a national project. We've been a partner over 50 years and have raised over $50 million, and now and that has directly impacted lives where, you know,
Yes.
21-year-olds are now, you know, well into their 50s and
Yeah.
well into and having children and grandchildren, and now there's a new problem in CF that they don't know how to deal with geriatric CF
Yes.
patients, because that
Yeah.
never happened before, because you never lived beyond
right.
beyond your adulthood. So you know, exciting things, and those are things that, you know, across the country we have impacted, but in our community, right, we've housed
Kinsman
senior-
Court too.
right?
Is
Yeah, and now
excellent.
a second one where you know, our club wasn't necessarily the, you know, we've helped out in some of that projects, and we have a member sitting on the board and things like that, but that still is, you know, former kinsmen who still believe in serving the community's greatest need, right? And seeing the need for more seniors housing and you know, and different type of seniors housing within our community.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
that really, I feel, is kind of one of our niches as a kin club. That and men and women can join, and so if it's something that you and your, you know, partner want to join into, then it does create a very much a family situation and a family organization, and you really do find instant family within that club.
So we've established back when the Kinsman Club of Neepawa was chartered, we chartered with how many members, you said?
We started with 37.
37, and the Cadets had how many?
33.
And when they combined and become the Kin Club of Neepawa, how many members did you have at that point?
That's a good question. I want to say there was maybe half dozen. Was there maybe a dozen, about 12 in total? Does that sound right, Noreen? I'm not sure.
Around that, yes, when
that.
you think of.
And
Yeah.
today, how many members do you have?
Today we have 6 members.
6 members.
6, but we are a small but mighty group, and we are always looking for new members. We've ebbed and flowed over the years as well. We've had well over 12 or 15, and then we've kind of dwindled back into, you know, 4 or 5, and we're just looking at doing an open house on October 12th to you know, put it out there again to the community that please come and see what we do. Come join us. We come make our community better.
But in the past, we saw that we had almost close to being equal numbers of Cadets and equal numbers of Kinsmen. So there was a nice balance. Am I right in saying that you got 6 members and they're all, and I
They're
say
all
this
ladies right
respectfully,
now.
and I say this respectfully, but it has to be somewhat of a concern, does it not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When we look at how many members we have within our community, we definitely are concerned that, you know, how long do 6
Yeah.
members continue on and doing the things that we want to do. However, we kind of look at, if we leave, what kind of hole do we leave in the community? We've done some amazing things as an organization, and for us, and for myself, I've not only have I served my community's greatest need, but I've also did the whole, you know, I've grown through fellowship, and I've grown through the learning and the leadership development and the personal and professional development that kin also provides. And so all of those skills that I have in my job, that I bring to other organizations that I volunteer with in our community, that I bring to the community, is all because of kin. And so I would hate for that to go away, because I'd love to have more people share in that and to experience that and to grow from that as well.
Well, obviously you've grown, and next year you'll be growing into the national president of Kin Club of Canada. So
Yeah.
we congratulate you for that. But Wayne and Noreen, I'll start with you, Wayne. Some of the things and the benefits personally that you got out of being a Kinsman and starting the Kinsman Club here. Do
I
you ever
thi-
reflect upon
Well,
something like
I
that?
think if anything, the leadership aspect, the management aspect of, I was prepared to step up and be counted. And yet I was maybe a follower, but I also wasn't hesitant at being a leader.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think that that's shown up in various ways that I have taken on jobs and whatever that in the leadership sense that I don't think I would have taken on had I not had the experiences of Kinsman. And to my mind, one of the best examples that I can think of is a Dave Speece. I have nothing but respect for Dave Speece in that when he first started, when he first joined Kinsman, Dave was definitely a follower. He never spoke out. He never spoke so on. And another one was an RCMP officer by the name of Phil Warren. And I can recall at the time that we used to have executive meetings in the opposite of Kinsman. And Phil Warren himself at one of the Kinsman meetings stood up and said, when did we decide that? I thought this was a community club. And at first thought I had to stop and think, and then I had to acknowledge the fact that Phil Warren was correct, that we were a community club. We were making decisions as a community,
Yeah.
for the community,
community,
and as a community. And Dave Speece, by the time he took on the presidency, Dave could look at somebody and carry on a conversation. Before that, you caught Dave looking down at his feet.
Yeah.
I have nothing but respect for that man
Yeah.
to this day.
And
in
he
that-
was the second. He stepped up for
He
the
stepped up.
president the second year.
Yeah.
Yes, after 1 year. on
Yeah.
that.
And it did. I think what it did for me was it made me realize that there were a lot of leaders in this community,
Yeah.
and ones that had never been asked to take on a leadership role.
Yeah.
And the one thing that it did for me was realize that there were people who were quite capable of leading this pack of 30 or 40 people.
Yeah.
And
Looking and thinking back on the charter member list and some of the names that have been mentioned here today, there was a day in this town where every financial institution, most every business, several teachers, if they didn't belong to Kinsman, they belonged to another service club.
yes,
In terms of Kinsman, I can remember where we were quite fortunate where all these entities were represented within the Kinsman Club. And also not only in the town of Neepawa, but the surrounding municipalities.
Yes.
There was members joining. Noreen, your thoughts on what has changed, and what we hear most often is that families are so busy now they don't have time. And I know technology has changed in that, but could you just share some of your thoughts? You were a mother of 4. Your husband was teaching. He was involved in a business, and you people found time to work and support the community, serve the community's greatest
Yeah.
needs. What has changed, do you think?
I don't know. More pressures on the jobs, would it be? I don't know. Our whole town has changed.
Yeah, everything has changed.
Everything
yeah.
has changed. And yet you see small towns, my hometown Grandview, and they don't have the Connect Club there anymore, but they
No.
have the Kinsman Club, and their wives still
Help
help out a
yeah.
lot with it. But they saw the need for a hall there, a desperate need, and
Yeah.
did it.
But
I'm not
locally,
sure.
like
Locally,
Wayne and Noreen, in your case, you had 4 of a young family. Is your family, do your kids have an interest in belonging to a service club as you
No.
did?
I would honestly say no.
no.
They don't have that interest, and yet, like, it doesn't bother it did bother me at first, the fact that the Kinsman Club and or the Connect Club might die in this community, but in the same way, if it dies, something else comes forth. And the fact that you are directing your energies towards a national program, a national position, it doesn't bother me in the same way
Yeah.
to think that the service club that we knew and experienced has changed. There's a lot of things that change, and there's a lot of programs that if we tried today would fall flat on their face, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And yet at the time they were quite popular.
I think volunteering in general has really changed across Canada, even, and especially in small towns. I think sometimes people don't feel like they want to commit themselves so much to something all year round or to belong. And
Yeah.
you know, we've had a lot of conversation about. Some people say, well, why would I want to pay a membership to be a volunteer? And that is a difference in when you belong to a club. You are a member of an association, and that membership really does give you much more benefit than just volunteering at a local tea or you know, coming down maybe to the Salvation Army and helping out for a couple of hours here and there or things like that. When you belong to an organization, and whether that, or any service organization, so whether that is KIN, whether that is Lions, whether that's Rotary, Kiwanis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, there are different benefits that come to that, whether that's, you know, being part of an organization that is protected legally and has, you know, insurance and things like that to protect you against any liability that may come from fundraising efforts or anything like that. Whether it's professional development that you can get through conferences or online, or instant business connections, instant personal connections that you can find, and then networking across the country. I think those are some of the other benefits that you get out of belonging to an association.
So as our younger generation, are they missing out, do you feel?
I feel that they are. I feel that there is, and especially since I would say the pandemic, I think we have really been disconnected from our fellow person in our communities, and trying to give back to our community and finding those connections, I think have been very awkward for a lot of people coming out of this pandemic. And I think if people are looking for like, what fills my bucket, what brings me joy, how do I give back to my community, what gives me a sense of purpose, I think sometimes looking towards a service club or a service organization, and whoever that best fit is for whatever that individual is, that's, you know, I think that really seriously needs to be looked at, more than, oh, well, I went and donated a couple of, you know, cans of soup here, or I went down to the library and, you know, did a little bit of this or that. And those are all good things, and those are all organizations that need assistance as well. But being a member of something that is going to create places like Kinsman Courts, or let's, you know, take on a big project like, you know, helping out building a school, or building, you know, building playground equipment for the school, or building a pool, or a recreation facility, because our governments aren't going to do that. Our community members have to do that. And if it's not individual community members that are going to do that, it has to be organizations. Because you really do have to look at it as kind of a bigger financial commitment. And so how do you protect yourself when you're doing those bigger financial commitments? Well, service organizations are a perfect way of doing that. So if you want to see big things happen in your community, you have to belong, you have to get out there, you have to involve yourself, you have to make it happen.
Make it happen. So how do you feel, Wayne?
Well, I feel the same way. That I think that the one thing that has happened is that COVID-19 has had an effect on us that we don't see. And the effect, of course, has been like in volunteer. Why would I volunteer now when I can get paid to do it? That's going to come to an end. And I think it's going to come to an end, and I hope it comes to an end. And so, again, being a volunteer is important. And again, like I dragged my heels on joining the Kinsman Club at Russell. And finally, when I did join them, I can recall who convinced me. And somebody might recognize the name, but I can recall who convinced me. And one of his arguments, I said, well, why would I join? Why would I join the Kinsmen? And again, his argument was, well, you can have a say in how this community develops.
Yep.
And it took a while for that to sink in, but it finally did sink in. That as a member of the organization, I had a say. As an individual, I had no say. And I think it was important, the fact that I did have a say in what happened in Russell, and then I had a say in what happened here in town of Neepawa, and Kinsman Court is an example. And the Kinsman Play Park was an example. The Touchwood Play Park was an example of, for the longest time, we used to have children who would come out and use the swings and the slide and the teeter-totter, etc. And the residents of Touchwood used it. And I was,
thank you, Wayne, for that. I was thinking, and time doesn't permit, but Noreen, you have so many photos and things that have happened, and the legacy that the Kinsmen and Kennets have left in this, in terms of your personal growth and being involved in some of these things. Could you just share a couple of them with us if you could? And
well, just the picture that I've got here is the Kinsman Club continuing to support the Boy Scout movement in Neepawa this week. And Kinsman Tom Borsa presented a check in the amount of $1,400.
Yeah, which was a lot of money. Yeah.
And then computers at the school. I mean, who would ever have believed back when the Kennets bought 2 for the computer, like for HMK.
Yeah.
And at the library, the Kinsmen had children's table and chairs built by the Touchwood Park Association. We were supporting them too in a project, and they, made. Babysitting course, which now is, you never know whether people are getting paid to do it or not, but we sponsored that different times. And the Summer Games of '92, Grant Lucan, chairman of the Neepawa Kinsman Club's Windfall Committee, so '92 it was going, presents a check for $1,000 to Manitoba Summer Games coordinator Greg Dunn, and they had contributed $4,200 to that, and the list goes on and on. Picture of the Kinsmen playing the Bombers. I'm not even sure what that was about in one of our CMP offices that had belonged. It goes on and on with, another one where the scout, and it's the late John Antonuk there, presents a $1,250 check to the PACs, again to scouts. So a lot of money went into keeping them, and they're still going.
So obviously a very, very rich legacy has been formed, and the footprint of the Kinsman and Kennet clubs is very large in this community. The fact is, we're down to 6 members, and looking forward, we have to think of the future and where we're going to go. And our time has run out, unfortunately, in terms of we could talk for another half an hour, Amanda. Like, we don't have any problem talking.
No, not at all, do we?
Anyways, it's time to close our program, and I would like to close it, and I would ask our viewers to reflect on the legacy of all the service clubs, but in today, particularly the Kinsmen and Kennets, of the legacy that they've left in our community and what the future holds if we don't build the membership up. And I'm going to start with you, if Noreen, if you could share a closing thought with us and a message to our viewers, what might that be?
Well, I think joining a small club opens it up to going on further. I would never have guessed either that I would have come out of the woodwork to lead other groups.
Yeah.
And, you know, you start a small group and continue on. I was on the provincial executive for the Manitoba Health Auxiliary Association and would never have guessed.
Yeah. So aside from serving the community's greatest needs, you've also have served your own needs somewhat too.
Yes,
and, yeah.
definitely.
And
yeah.
have grown from it.
Yeah. And you forget all the things. I mean, it's 40 years, 40 some years. So all these pictures, and I'm hoping to get that book finished sometime.
Yeah.
But
I hope you do too, yes.
yeah. And we should, as talking to Judy Watson today regarding health auxiliary, and she
Nice.
said we should try to get together sometime, we older members, before too long.
I think we should do that. That's a good thought. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Noreen,
Yeah.
and thank you for joining us today. Wayne, your closing thought for our viewers today.
Well, I believe in sort of the same thing, that I think on one hand, when you had asked me, would I have any worry about one of the clubs folding? Yes, I would. The three existing clubs that we have, I think, are important. And each of them have taken, they have considered the fact that the community aspect, but they have all said, this is important to us. And I think that's important. That in itself is important. Like the Kinsmen, even though we have taken on the Lions and the Rotary Club at times in the activities that we do have identified we have, each of us, identified the community's greatest needs and worked to solving those.
Yes.
And I think that is still important, and I would hate to see any of the 3 or 4 or
Absolutely.
5 service kind of clubs disappear in this town, because the COVID-19 is a passing thing.
But I think it's made Neepawa what it is, the town
Mhm.
that it is.
Yes.
With all the, you know, we attract people coming
Yeah.
here.
Yep. So much, very much so, yeah.
And I think that's important, is that the community should not forget
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it is a drawing point.
Yep.
And again, take a look at the community. I look at what's growing on the main drag, and it doesn't bother me the fact that some of the places have disappeared and some new ones have quickly filled up their spot. You don't see any empty storefronts on this community.
Yeah. We're very,
And
very fortunate that way.
We're fortunate that way, but it's because I think we have recognized the fact that it's a changing world.
Yeah.
And being a changing world, it bothers me, and it doesn't bother me,
Mhm.
the fact that the Kin Club is down to 6 or
Mhm.
10 members. I don't think the fact that 4 or 5 of them have remained on the board of Kinsman Courts.
Yep.
And they're still there.
Yep.
Yep.
And they're members, they aren't paid up members of any service club, but they are members of the Kinsman Club.
Yep.
And
Thank you for sharing that with us, Wayne, and thank you for taking the time to be with us. Amanda, your closing thoughts today, and where do you see the Kin Club of Neepawa going?
Well, my kind of closing thoughts is that I think as individuals within our community, we really have to decide what kind of community we want and the types of things that we want in our community, and making that happen and having that voice is really about joining organizations that can make those things happen. And I feel that Kin is a big part of the fabric of Neepawa. We may be a very small group, but we are certainly very active. We just had an award-winning project that we did nationally. So our Hugs for the Holidays project won the National Service Award and was recognized as a major contribution to our community. When you think that we impacted 253 seniors by having 6 members of our community, that we, impacted that many people in one project. And we asked for help, and we asked for our community to support us, and our community did. And I think the community sees us as important. High Life Foods just recognized us as their charity of choice at their fund days and gifted us $40,000 so that we could put that back into the community. And we're excited to have that happen. And if people want to join us and to see where that kind of funding can spark something new within our community that can benefit us all, then I think that's important. And we're looking for new members. And if you want to have a voice and how that impacts your life or your family or how that works, then reach out, give us a call. We'll come to a meeting, see how, or just even help us out with one event. There's lots of things that are coming up.
Yes.
If you see that we're doing an event, or if we're doing some sort of fundraising or service project and you're interested, just we're okay with you having just a one-time event to come out to and test drive it. You don't have to sign up on the dotted line the first time.
That's a good point.
You really should find your right fit, and we hope that we are your right fit. But I really feel that there's hope in the future for people to look at service organizations as a way to build the community of their choice.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Amanda, for those closing thoughts, and thank you for the time to join us today that you've taken. And we also wish you the best on the national executive. And it's exciting. I feel excited for you, so I know that you'll do a good job there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyways, that concludes our program here today, and I thank you for watching. And if there's anything that's been discussed today in terms of Kinsmen, the Kin Club of Canada, our local community projects that they're involved in, or anything that you may have, questions you may have, or interest you may have, please feel free to give Amanda a call or drop in and see her down at the thrift store, and she'll be able to answer your questions. If she doesn't have the answer, she'll find it, I can assure you. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed our program today. My name is Lyle Watson. Until next time, stay healthy and stay happy.